Candidates who want to be trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs are elected in statewide contests. 15 candidates squared off in the primary election for the 3 at-large seats at OHA. Voters narrowed that list to 6. Now voters get to pick the final 3. All 3 incumbents are facing off against 3 challengers in November. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Laura Yamada. Well, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was created by the 1978 Constitutional Convention. It established a board of trustees made up of 9 members who are elected statewide to serve 4-year terms. 4 of the 9 positions are designated as at-large seats representing the state as a whole, with the other 5 trustees representing each of their island districts. The trustees, who have a high degree of autonomy, set policy for the agency, whose mission is to improve the well-being of Native Hawaiians. 3 at-large seats are up for election this year. The primary election narrowed down a long list of candidates to the top 6, and 5 of them are with us tonight. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions. And you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Our volunteers, PBS Hawaii friends and family, standing by to take your questions. Hello, everyone. There they are, so please keep them busy. We want to hear from you. All right, now to our guests. William Ila Jr. He is currently the Deputy Director of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands and the former Chairman of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Incumbent Rowena Akana is our next guest. She has been an OHA trustee at large since 1990, making her tenure the longest on the board. John D. Wahe'e IV also currently holds an at-large seat and is running for re-election. He has been an OHA trustee since 2000. He is also the son of former Governor John Wahe'e, who was instrumental in creating OHA. Next is Brendan Lee. He chaired the 2016 AHA Native Hawaiian Governance Convention. He is the president of the Kamehameha Schools Alumni Association and second vice president of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. And Lei Ahu'isa, also a current at-large trustee who is running for her 2nd term. She previously served in the Hawaii State House of Representatives and the State Board of Education. Now, there is a 6th candidate for this race, former state lawmaker Faye Hanohano. She did not respond to numerous attempts to invite her to participate. All right, so we have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of folks who want to jump in, and so we're just going to get right to it. And we're going to start with a little bit of a tough question. Do you think OHA has a credibility problem? And if so, why and how might you fix it? Anybody wants to jump in?
Yeah, it does. I think a lot of the publicity that's come out of the audit has shown that the public, Native Hawaiians and the public in general, has very little trust in office right now. What can we do to fix it? There's a lot of us who have talked about bringing civility back to the boardroom. And the way to do that is by following the process that's set in place. And that should eliminate a lot of the infighting that happens in the boardroom.
I would only add that the impression of OHA not being as successful as people expect it to be is also one of unrealistic expectations. There are many Native Hawaiian beneficiaries who believe that OHA can do everything for everyone, and that's a misnomer. I mean, OHA does have some money in the bank, but that's money that could be spent really quickly without any sort of idea to the future, and so the corpus must remain well invested so that the interest off of the corpus can be spent in a reasonable manner. And I think the future Board of Trustees is going to have to look at making some tough decisions in terms of what OHA can and cannot do, or what it should or should not do. And of course, when you do that, that's going to make some people happy and some beneficiaries not so happy.
Who else wants to jump in?
You know, I want to say that when I first came on the board in 1990, OHA was already controversial. It's that kind of board. We had Auntie Frenchie DeSoto. We had, strong personalities. And yes, I've been on the board the longest, and I've been through many, many boards with Billy Beamer, with Kinao Kamali'i, with very strong people. Clayton He, Abraham Iona, who was the chief of police for Maui. When Clayton and Abe and I came in 1990, the board was still in negotiations with the Waihe'i administration for the past due amount that was not paid by the state to OHA. So OHA was trying to fulfill this mandate that was almost impossible to fulfill with so little money. We were getting maybe $250,000, $300,000 around there from the legislature, so it wasn't 20%. And it was hard to fulfill this mandate and the expectations that people had that OHA was supposed to, right the wrongs of 100 years.
So if there is a perception at the very least by the public that there is potentially a credibility issue, just whatever has happened for OHA to move and grow, how then do you address that?
Well, I think that, we all along, OHA has faced challenges every step of the way. We had to sue the state. We had to sue the Board of Education. We had to sue private owners. We had to sue everybody in order to get justice for Hawaiians. So the road has been very difficult and bumpy along the way. And when you go through all of these trials and tribulations with states, private owners, your own beneficiaries, there's bound to be not only mistrust, but differences of opinion between trustees. We're all elected separately.
Well, let some of the others jump in if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
But there's everybody, a big crowd today. Credibility issue, perception or not?
I think, we're just coming off a recent audit. And of course, whenever, you're following an audit that may not have been, that was critical, you're going to have less credibility in that instance. But we've already started addressing our discretionary spending, the things that were criticized in the audit. For example, with our Kulia grants, we've already passed policies that identified the purpose and made sure that the budget for it was pre-approved by the board, and also that it complied with its own policy and with state law. Just today, we introduced a draft policy dealing with the trustee allowances that would, make sure that it complied with the Ethics Commission rules, which, to be honest, let me say that it was kind of recent that we realized that the trustee allowances that they were judged by the same rules, Ethics Commission rules, as the legislative allowances, because first of all, it was trust funds. Secondly,
so you think there was some misunderstanding?
Yes, and the purposes for them were so different that, and in the past, the Ethics Commission had never commented on them before.
Well, I know this is very complicated, and I'm sure there's a lot we can explain, but I want to make sure that Lake gets a chance to jump in.
But I want to say, though, that we did also address all those concerns in today's draft audit, policy. And Executive Director Daniel Gluck even praised us because we had him review it for the new one. So we're on the right track with that.
Okay.
I could speak being a state representative and an OHA trustee, so I know what a contingency fund is. It was $5,000 when I was in there, and then when raised to $10,000. It's so that we can do newsletters, we can communicate with our constituents. In a house, you have maybe 15,000 constituents. Senate, a little bigger district. But when you're in OHA, your constituency is the beneficiaries. Everyone's that Hawaiian, indigenous, or Hawaiian, part Hawaiian. So I was told by Joe Suki, who was a former speaker, don't give up the $22,000 that you get, even if you're criticized by the state auditor, because he doesn't really understand. We're not really a state agency. we're a trust with a fiduciary duty as a trustee. So we can only think, oh, we're going to use it for communication, we're going to use it for newsletters. It's really to help the Hawaiian people.
I want to turn to Trustee Makana because there's been a lot of focus. It's not surprising news. It's been out there quite a bit. It's something that you address on your website as well. Some of the claims and charges against you. I want to give you a chance to talk about that because there is a lot of controversy that does seem to follow you.
We're going to, well, as a result of that, I've sued the Ethics Commission, and we have 2 lawsuits now against them. Number one, it's one of the lawsuits challenges their right to question how trust funds are spent because they're trust funds, they're not tax dollars. And we have policies within OHA that give us the guidelines, and everything that they're alleging, these are not charges, they're alleged charges, and they have yet to prove it. Our attorneys have asked for proof of these alleged violations. So far we have not received any of it. And so there are many, many things. You know, you can write up, well, we're going to, they offered my attorneys a deal early on, November last year, and said if I would pay $25,000, they would not print my name in the newspaper and they would not allege these charges.
I don't want to get too much into the details of it because I know there's a lot, but I appreciate you starting to address that.
Oh,
and
we are.
that you feel that these charges are
They're ridiculous.
claims are inaccurate. I know we're going to get a chance to talk about that a little bit more, but I do want to move on. So let me move on to the next question. To the incumbents, can you point to something you have done to help OHA meet its goal of improving the conditions of the Native Hawaiian community? I'm going to start with the incumbents on this one.
I think, well, you know, I've done I've been here for so long. I think I was initially the chairman of the Committee on Policy and Planning. And at that time, I introduced several policies that would, increase trustee accountability, including, in fact, one of them was a policy that would make the trustee allowance like pre-approved or reimbursed, which is something that they actually brought back to address the latest audit findings. And so that was one thing, policy and planning. I was also, more recently, when I was the chairman of the the Committee on Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment, I would say we had 3 of the top 4 most successful legislative sessions in terms of OHA initiatives passed into law. So that was another thing, and I will turn this over to my colleague.
I've been in there 3 years. So just what I've done in the 3 years. Testified at the legislature. I have a network of friends being from the legislature, also being on the State Board of Education. So I like the charter school movement. You know, I go, as a trustee at large, we get to go and visit the other islands, Kauai, you know, where you're from, Maui. So it was a real learning experience for me, and I was so glad I did get elected to this. It's sort of like an honor or a privilege to learn about my dad's, you know, my Hawaiian side. My mom, of course, is Chinese, you know, so I learned about that. But there's so much I could help, almost like mentor our CEO. And I think we brought changes. When I first got elected, I got a contingency fund of $8,000, the leftover from the former trustee, because they end their year June 30. I got elected December, on board January 1st. I thought, what is this? So that kind of changed. It morphed to the policy committee. I was also ad hoc committee for economic development, innovation.
Trustee O'Connor.
Well, I've been there a long time, and I know that I've contributed a great deal to the Hawaiian community. I've been able to change the law for kuleana landowners by providing testimony in a bill to the Honolulu City Council, where it was started as a pilot project, where kuleana landowners who still have a descendant living on the land that they received from Kamehameha III now, if they can prove their lineage, they can pay a minimum of $100 to $300 per year on taxes. Many of our Hawaiian people were losing their lands because they couldn't pay the high taxes because they found themselves in areas like Kona or Lahaina where the land taxes were so high that they were giving up their lands or selling it. I mean, that's only one of many
I
accomplishments.
have no doubt that you have a long list. I'm going to have to move on to the next question. Thank you. This is to the challengers. What needs are not being met by the current board, and what might you do differently? What might be your focus?
I think working with some of the other state agencies that serve beneficiaries, working with some of the trusts, the Native Hawaiian trusts that are out there to leverage resources on behalf of beneficiaries is something that needs to be done. I think also the board of trustees, whoever is going to survive this election, is going to have to prepare for legal challenges that are in play now because of Judge Kavanaugh being appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. I would be very cautious of groups like Grassroots Hawaii because they've been hoping for this day, they've been praying for this day, that there's a majority on the U.S. Supreme Court that is not favorable to any indigenous folks across the United States. And so I think the preparation for this challenge that's coming is probably the most important thing that this board is going to do in the next 5 to 10 years.
I would agree with Bill about the partnership. You know, that's a lesson that the board can take from Kamehameha Schools. The Kamehameha Schools is given a mandate of educating the Lahui, all Native Hawaiians. Well, you can't do that on 3 campuses. So they've now shifted their focus and are now partnering with other major educational institutions so that they can reach more kids. And OHA needs to do the same thing. OHA can't house all the Hawaiians, but OHA can partner with Department of Hawaiian Homelands. OHA can't educate all the Hawaiians, but OHA can partner with Kamehameha Schools to have more programs to help more Native Hawaiians. And all of these types of partnerships help the state of Hawaii, not just Hawaiians. If we provide more housing for Native Hawaiians, that frees up other housing for the rest of the state. So that helps everybody.
I want to get a little more from the challengers here on this one because this is a question about the audit that's going on right now, and a number of the incumbents were able to address that to a certain extent as far as what's being changed and what's being addressed. So to the challengers on this one, do you feel that the audit is correct? And if so, what would you change maybe to address that?
I think some of the things in the audit had merit. There were other things that the audit got wrong. So for example, listing the agreement, the memorandum of understanding between DHHL and OHA as a non-discretionary grant, it was off the mark. So OHA provides $3 million a year to pay for debt service on projects that result in infrastructure being created on DHHL lands, which then result in lots being available for lessees. So that's an example of where the auditor didn't get it right. There are examples of where the auditor, pointed out where we needed to tighten fiscal controls, and I think audits are good. They tell you where you should improve or where you can improve, and there is another audit that the board just approved, which is, I think, a more in-depth financial audit, and there's lots of rumors out there about who did what and who should be released and all of that, and it's all premature because there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. So we'll wait for this forensic audit to get finished and then take a look at how improvements can be made after that.
Your thoughts, Brendan?
I would agree. These issues have been playing out in the media and amongst all of ourselves as well in conversations. So I wholeheartedly agree. The $3 million that OHA gives to DHHL, that's mandated in the Constitution. And so for the auditor to say that's a discretionary fund, well, it's actually law that has to happen. I agree with what John said earlier about what the policies that they're putting in place to tighten things up. To the board's credit, they were in the forefront of saying that these policies were coming in place ahead of the audit. It's just the audit was released before all of these things could be put in place. The criticism then would be, well, why did it take an audit for all of these things to start being put in place? So at least the organization itself is moving in the right direction.
Let me get to some other questions here, and I don't want to say they're going to be rapid-fire questions, but maybe we can keep it a little bit shorter on some of these answers to get through a number of issues. One question from a viewer, also from us. TMT, what is your stand on the TMT?
Oh, rapid fire, then it's I support both science and culture.
I would agree. I support TMT. I do not support what UH is doing.
Wait a minute. I don't understand that. You support well, either you support TMT or you support the people. So, you know, I'm not sure what you meant by that, but
UH's mismanagement of
Yeah,
Mauna Kea.
well,
That's
yeah.
not the same as TMT.
well, the mismanagement of Mauna Kea is documented by many audits, and certainly OHA has been trying with this administration for the last 3 years to get an MOU with the administration, with DLNR and the university, so
Do you
that
support the TMT if it was managed better?
yes. Right now, the way the rules are, in fact, their rules, administrative rules, are so antiquated, it's ridiculous. You know, these are things that we've been working on for years, but it takes time because we're not the only people involved. There are other people that have to sign off on these things. DLNR don't want to give up their power. The governor doesn't want to give up his power. So it's difficult to get to the point where we can all see eye to eye. And we are definitely against continuing giving the UH the leases for them to do whatever they want.
I see some head nodding over here as far as supporting the TMT, but looking for better management. Is that fair to say on this side of the table?
Okay, the OHA Code of Conduct kind of it suggests that when the board takes a position, we don't take a position
Against it.
against it. And the board did take a position to be neutral on the TMT. On the other hand, in the case of Mauna Kea, we do feel that there needs to be better management, and if there's any kind of compliance laws that the TMT might violate, we would, want to advocate on behalf of that. The thing with the TMT, though, is you guys got to remember is that we're not the ones who decide whether this gets built or not. And in fact, we're not even part of the process right now.
Important to clarify that. I do want to let Leahu'isa jump in.
I was new to
We
this
have a
when
lot
I
of
got
questions,
elected.
so sorry. I don't
Okay,
mean to-
rapid fire. I was
Yeah.
new when I just got elected. I was on the side of our beneficiaries. I went up to the Mauna with Trustee Akana to protest it. What is this? Digging into a mountain 25 stories, 21 stories into the ground. There's an aquifer underneath there. Look what happened with the volcano, all those Kilauea erupts. I don't think, Madam Pele, I don't think our spiritual gods are they're not happy with what's happening. Being newly elected, I learned the process. I learned to speak with people, went up there, helped Kuching, Auntie Maxine, learn about Puhakulo. I mean, all these things that the Iwi kupuna, the bones in the sand, all this stuff that's happening to OHA. And the public doesn't really know about it. So that's my stance on it. I was against it because they were digging into a mountain and mismanaged.
I want to get to some viewer questions, but let me get this one really quick. Do you favor having a constitutional convention? Why or why not?
I do not.
No.
No on the
Unanimous.
constitutional.
No.
No, I mean, there are like prominent community leaders saying that they want to use it to abolish OHA, like literally saying that. So it wouldn't be prudent to support that endeavor.
And it's just not OHA that would be put on the table.
Exactly, yeah.
LBGT rights,
Union.
Native Hawaiian gathering rights, water rights. The water code was written in the 78 Constitution. That can be overturned. Development rights. There's a lot of people out there who would love to see all of that go away so that they could develop Hawaii indiscriminately.
I can recall. That's a big one.
Okay, here's a little bit of a different question. This is from our viewers. Again, I want to try and get to these because it's important they're heard. This is from Sarah in Kaneohe. She asks, as a longtime resident born and raised in Hawaii, but not of Hawaiian ancestry, She'd like to know if she should still vote for OHA, and how does OHA support all ethnicities?
Absolutely, she should. For the reason that
Some people, I think, are not sure. They think that it's
for the
only
reason I just said about the
yeah.
Constitutional Convention, you hear this catchphrase all the time, what's good for Hawaiians is good for Hawaii. And that is absolutely true. And because the law right now says that everyone in the state can vote for OHA, like we all agreed upon about the CON-CON, there are those out there that would seek to tear down Native Hawaiian rights, which would hurt the state. And I promise you, those people are going to show up and vote for candidates whose sole mission is to get into OHA to help tear it down. So if you care about Hawaii, if you care about housing, education, any of those types of things, it is very important for you to educate yourself and vote in the election. If you're uncomfortable voting for a Native Hawaiian because you're not Native Hawaiian, I promise you, you know a Native Hawaiian. Go and ask them who they would like you to throw your support behind.
Yeah. OHA does things that impacts everybody in the state of Hawaii.
That's
the
right.
reason why they should vote.
Okay, here's another one from, this is from Bill. Could the lands be separated from state control within reason so that trustees can develop the land without restriction?
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts on that one? Maybe I'll let you guys jump in.
Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why OHA was seeking recognition from the federal government. In 1959, in the compact, the United States gave the ceded lands to the state to manage for the Native Hawaiians. Then the federal government made two beneficiaries. They also made the general public a part of the beneficiaries. So the ceded lands then, if we had control over the ceded lands, we could do economic development projects to help, not only help our people, but help the state. Housing, health, education, all those things would be easy for us. Right now, we only get proceeds from the lease rents that the state charges on the ceded lands. If we had those, at least a portion of them, we could do economic development and do many things, partnering with other Native groups who have already offered, who have banks who would like to fund Native interests.
I would say the economic development side is the biggest thing to that, the absolutely biggest thing. Honolulu Harbor sits on ceded lands. If we were able to get recognition by the federal government, well, the Honolulu Harbor is the biggest one. If we were able to get recognition from the federal government, part of reparations and negotiations could possibly be to release us from the Jones Act. There's a tribe of Native Americans in Arizona, who have never been subject to the Jones Act. They are free. You can legally go there to their reservation and buy Cuban cigars, and you always have been able to. If we were released from the Jones Act, that immediately lowers the cost of living in the state of Hawaii for every single person, regardless of their ethnic.
Another land issue. Let's have some of the others jump in on this one from the caller. Would like the panel to comment on views about Hawaiians who have been displaced by the state because the land is sold out from under them. What is OHA's responsibility here? Maybe I'll let the two of you jump in first.
I don't. What's the question?
Yeah, the question.
Been displaced
They
by
would
the
like
state?
to comment about Hawaiians who have been displaced by the state because land is sold out from under them. That's their perspective anyway. What's OHA's responsibility?
this
You think
all-
is that skewed a little
Hawaiian
bit?
Is this
do you
about
think?
lease land?
I don't understand.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think that.
How was
Not
it sold out
clear
from?
enough?
How was it sold out from under them?
I couldn't
Unless
tell
it's
you.
Hawaiian homeland.
It's a-
I guess there's some concern.
It's a perception, I
It's a
think.
perception, you
So,
think, more
land
perception.
can be sold if taxes aren't paid.
Okay.
That's one way, which is one of the benefits that OHA through Rowena got that limited,
Kuleana.
the Kuleana land. So a misnomer that I run into all the time is people will do genealogy and they will come up with my tutu owned that land, but they forget that this was probated and that there is a process. And so there's a perception that the state has sold
And
land
that
out from.
process was from a long time ago.
It is, and a lot of times tutus sold land and they didn't tell their brothers and sisters that they sold the land. So it would be case specific in order to answer that question.
Yeah, I think we could advocate for whatever is happening in that situation if we
And specific.
If we knew-
Again, maybe back to
I
the
thought the
case by
question
case,
was.
Yeah.
I
depending
thought the
on-
question was going to be about the volcano, where they're displaced by that, and now who's helping them look for lands because they
That's
were
the
on lands,
concern.
and I think that's what the question is. Not a long time ago.
Here's a caller from Waipahu. What are your views on sovereignty?
Well, define sovereignty, because
It means
People say, I saw Bill in an interview this past week, or they asked him, are you in favor of federal recognition or sovereignty? Well, federal recognition
let me add
is
this.
sovereignty.
Do you favor complete independence, a nation within a nation agreement with the U.S., the status quo, something else?
Why can't we have both? Because one has nothing to do with the other. You did not have to be Native Hawaiian to be a subject to the crown of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Federal recognition is a political distinction and relationship between Native Hawaiians and the U.S. government.
That's right.
Independence for the kingdom has nothing to do about being Native Hawaiian. Nothing at all. Anybody, most of the people who overthrew the kingdom were subjects to the crown. They were born in the United States, but they took they swore an oath. Two, I believe, of them sat in parliament for the kingdom. That's the common misnomer that people have. One has nothing to do with the other.
So
We can
I'm
have
seeing a common
both.
theme here, a lot of misunderstandings in a lot of different areas that's made it
and
difficult
I think what,
people to understand.
what I sense from that question is this desire for justice. And
Yeah.
as was said at the table, there's nothing to prevent both actions from occurring.
I'm not for being an Indian tribe. I think that's what they're trying to get at. Because we had the Nai Aupuni, and then we had the DOI come in, and they had all of those hearings. Bill, did you?
Oh,
Go
I
ahead,
got
attend
yelled
those.
at those hearings too.
Well,
That's what I think the caller is referring to.
it's hard to know what the caller meant.
Kingdom of Hawaii.
I
A
think
lot of these are broad issues that have depend on different factors.
Right.
OHA does have a fiduciary duty to make sure that that our entitlements and the trust is protected, and that's why for a long time we supported federal recognition, because it would do that. Although with the Kavanaugh appointment, things clearly have changed a little, but when President Obama made the executive order, the rulemaking order, in that rulemaking order, the United States does identify Hawaiians as the indigenous people of Hawaii, with whom the United States has a trust and political relationship with. That, to me, does protect us from a lot of anti-Hawaiian type lawsuits.
Except the
think
new
you're-
lawsuit, the new case that just got won, the federal judge in Texas.
I'm going to let you continue on that in just a minute, just to make sure that I get to this viewer question, because it's similar, so you can continue. Supreme Court Justice once expressed that Native Hawaiian programs are constitutionally questionable. How will OHA respond to that threat? I think it's kind of wrapped into this discussion.
Well, I was at that case. It was Justice Scalia and Rehnquist. Those two justices could not understand why we didn't have a blood quantum for the beneficiaries of our trust, and we said, but we did. But this is why they were very confused about why OHA was mandated to help the less than 50s and the 50%ers. So our mandate is so broad, and it was created by the Constitution. I mean, it's in the Constitution based on the '78 Constitution. So the justices are used to dealing with American Indian tribes, where their roles and how they apply for recognition is slightly different than Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska was given their recognition, I think, primarily because America needed their pipeline. So what they did was allow them to use corporations, because the Alaska Natives didn't fit in the square peg that American Indians fit in. And so Hawaiians are different, even more different than the Alaska Natives. So when the justices looked at our case, and that's why in the Rice v. Cayetano case, the decision is so narrow, it was based on the 14th Amendment that everybody can vote, because we were using tax dollars for the ballots.
Some misunderstandings on the Supreme Court level as well. Brendan, I cut you off there a little bit. You were mentioning.
The recent decision by the federal judge in Texas, who overruled the standing federal policy about Native Americans adopting within their own tribe. And he said that it gave them an unfair racial biased advantage over non-Native Americans wanting to adopt a child from the tribe. And that is going to have major implications, because for the first time ever, a federal judge has ruled that Native people within the United States who have historically been protected by the federal government are no longer being protected. This is a case that will go to Kavanaugh.
So the issue is Native Alaskans and Native Americans, they get to decide who are tribal members, who are members of...
With zero blood quantum.
They get to decide, right?
Yeah.
In the case of Hawaii, because of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act and Prince Kohio having to deal with sugar planters in Hawaii and big ranches in Hawaii,
Right.
there was a negotiation and it came out to be 50%. So the blood quantum issue was created by Congress. If you left it up to Native Hawaiians, it would be very similar to the other indigenous
1/32.
groups,
Right.
right? So that's what's confusing, and that's what you have. That's why you have Judge Kavanaugh and the folks that are really anti-Native peoples saying that it's a race-based program, and it's not. As stated earlier, this is a political relationship
Yes.
because of the unique history and how Hawaii came into the United States
I
as
think each of these
as a
questions could
territory.
be an entire show on its own. I get it. Let's move on. Let's bring it back home a little bit here. In the primary election, there were more than 425,000 blank votes in the OHA at-large contest, almost half of the votes cast. Why do you think that is?
That's actually not correct.
Not correct.
So the way that's calculated, so you're able to vote for 3 people on the ballot. So if you voted for only one person, your other 2 votes are
Right.
counted as a
Okay.
blank ballot. So that's actually not
So it
correct.
kind of skewed it.
It's
the
skewed.
way that
It's
it
actually
looked.
more around 185,000, somewhere around that.
And the other reason too would be that people feel like this is not their kuleana. You know, this is a Hawaiian
Question
issue.
from Sarah?
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, it's
But
a
that's-
Hawaiian
yeah.
issue, and we shouldn't get involved in that, and only Hawaiians should vote in that election. So a lot of people tell me that. In fact, a lot of Kama'aina, you know, people that have lived here, our Japanese neighbors, Chinese neighbors, they say, "Oh, that's a Hawaiian thing. We don't want to be bothered with that. That's for you
Hawaiians
folks."
don't vote either.
And
The
that's
Kingdom
another-
of Hawaii people do not
Yeah.
vote.
And why do you think that is?
They have their own ID card, they have their own driver's license, all separate from.
Because it's an American
That's a
election.
particular distinction because of that.
And because it was a 2-sided ballot, I know someone who actually worked, who volunteered at the elections. They said the majority of the ballots they got, when they turned them over, the entire ballot was blank. So it's not that they just skipped the OHA race. They didn't vote on it. They voted on the front side of the ticket and turned it in.
And what do you think the repercussions of that are?
Well, I think, people who vote for just one candidate, and that's on
That's on
that
purpose.
is a strategy. That's on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
They call it plunking.
plunking.
Yeah, flunking. So the
So-
primary, you had that.
I mean, everyone whoever ran for the at-large seat figured that out right away. That if if the person only votes for me, that puts me at an advantage.
Well, let's move to some other issues. Some of them questions from our viewers, some of ours. What should OHA be doing to provide more housing for Native Hawaiians?
I'll answer that. Ever since I came on board, I've been approaching the Native Hawaiian homelands to ask them why couldn't they lease, they do commercial leases, why couldn't they lease some land to OHA so we could develop the lands with developers. We don't have the same restrictions that they do. And we could also provide housing for the less than 50s and not do homes that cost $300,000, $400,000, single family homes, when really the need is greater for families who can't afford. So if you did townhouses or apartments even, I know American Indians, certain tribes, they provide apartment living for a lot of their beneficiaries. So I don't think the Department of Hawaiian Homelands has been very creative in how they've been building homes.
I think that's only fair. That
Well,
William
I think
Mr.
there is a huge challenge to that, and it's not of choice of the department. It's the fact that beneficiaries of the small N trust could actually sue the department for allowing trust lands to be leased to less than small N Native Hawaiians, and that became an issue in the Nanakuli housing, where Kali Watson folks did a rental project, and because the types of funds that were used from HUD actually created an issue where the preference for small N Native Hawaiians on Hawaiian homelands came into question. So it's something that I think maybe some legislative
I
fix
think
could
there's a-
I
occur.
think we can, let me just jump
There's a
in and add
legislative
this
fix for that.
question here, because I think this is within the same discussion. I just want to get this viewer question in. What can OHA do better to help Hawaii's homeless population, many of which are Native Hawaiian? I think it kind of leads into
Oh,
that
yeah,
issue as
absolutely.
well. So.
I think Rowena and Bill hit it right on the head
Yeah.
about partnering with DHHL. There are challenges, but there's always a solution to a challenge.
That's
and
right.
this is a conversation that hasn't seriously been looked at by both agencies to partner together in much more creative ways. And I think that is going to be determine the future of housing for Native Hawaiians and the state, honestly.
And this is less exciting, but we could also, if we made it like one of our top priority in our next strategic plan, and made it a strategic result, it would direct our community grants into programs that put people into homes. We could also, using our public policy department, advocate for more public housing in Hawaiian areas.
Well,
And
yeah, you're right.
of course, I think there's a lot. Partnering with DHHL, there's a lot to that also, because we're state agencies, and we do have some advantage as state agencies when we partner together and,
Laura, I have a lot to say on
and
this.
develop
I was
things.
going to ask you if you wanted to jump in.
I'm a realtor. I have a lot to say on this. I get in OHA and I look at Kakakamakai. Why do we even accept that land? Within, 30 years, the water level is going to, the ocean, the sea level will rise 3 to 4 feet. Even UH, now the medical school, they're having problems with rust. They won't let us build. Why did we accept that? When I got on board, Francis Order, head of Group 70, now retired, said we should really think about exchanging that land where we can build housing. Right now, it sits, 3 years I've been there, nothing. It sits there with nothing. Okay, so that's one. The second one is affordable housing, not affordable housing. This is just housing for people who, I hate to keep going back to this. We're supposed to get, by the Constitution, 20% of ceded land revenue. We get 15 mil. We are stuck at this ceiling. Give us the money. They want us to help the homeless, the obesity problem, the diabetes, the health problems, the charter schools, immersion programs. Give us the 119 million sitting in BNF now that the legislature, the governor controls, and just parcels out to OHA and expects OHA to do all of this.
So maybe
I'm new to this
clarify.
now, and I'm thinking, what
Maybe
is
this
going
is,
on?
I don't know if this, who wants to address it, because this is similar too, because I don't know exactly all the numbers that are the most accurate numbers, but Kanevai, it's related. OHA being a $600 million agency, that's her understanding of how much the agency is worth, holding 27,000 acres of land. Is OHA able to manage their assets? So, so when you look at those numbers and that amount of land, you would, the perception at least,
You want me to say something or let the others talk
But
first?
be careful, because not all of OHA's land is developable.
Yeah.
Some of it is
Public trust.
conservation.
Conservation
Yes,
land.
Some of it is
conservation.
ag, so you're very
ag.
you're
Yeah.
very limited in what you can do on ag. But going back to the original question, I think OHA can certainly go beyond partnerships with the Department of Hawaiian
Right.
Homelands and enter into some agreements with HHFDC, the county. The county receives
Yep.
a lot of HUD money, and so it's just a matter of getting everybody to sit
see,
down.
When you accept
Look
HUD
at 'em.
money,
Yep.
then you can't only do housing for Hawaiians.
If,
You
we
have
get-
to do it for
so we-
everyone.
So we get creative like the Native
Right.
Alaskans, where they have 2 buildings, one for Native Alaskans and one for non-Native Alaskans, and then they use the non-Native Alaskans to
Subsidize,
subsidize.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I
Okay,
was just going to
let's
say,
get-
or you provide a program of grants for subsidies. So the building is rented out to whoever at this amount of price, and if you're Native Hawaiian,
Well, we
you
used
get
to
a
have it.
subsidy.
We used to have that. When we first got our money in 1993 with the settlement, we provided $20 million to start in a revolving loan fund for all the homesteaders that were on the list, and those homesteaders who could not get mortgages.
Down payments, yes.
For the down payments, we put up the money. And for people who needed to fix their homes on Hawaiian homelands because they didn't own their land, so they couldn't mortgage the house with a banker. So we provided this $20 million for a revolving fund, and it worked very well. And I guess we used it for about 15 years, and then the money, went somewhere else. But there's, I want to go back to DHHL, because DHHL gives commercial leases to non-Hawaiians. So I don't see the problem that they can lease to OHA.
But the challenge is the leases to commercial, the leases for commercial, the land under those leases have to be determined by the commission to be available lands. So,
I want to answer that question.
so lands
Okay.
that are
It's
not
inside.
available for commercial then can be used for homesteading. So that's the challenge. These lands are not suitable for homesteading. That's why Kamakana Ali'i sits on the land across from the building, because there are restrictions on the airport.
We can change the rules.
We
I
would
just
have
wanna-
to change the law.
Okay,
Commission
Representative
Act, yes.
Gene Ward has a task force he's put together, which includes Peter Savio and some other very important people, to look at how we can get more people onto Hawaiian homelands. I know you're the deputy director right now, but we were at this presentation, Peter Apo and I, and that was really interesting. John Michael White, all of these developers were interested in helping us. I think that's the answer, the short answer for the caller.
A couple other properties here I want to bring up since we're talking about land. Caller wants to know about OHA plans to do with the following properties: Fisherman, the old Fisherman's Wharf property,
Yes.
and Bolodrome and Eisenberg, both vacant, owned by OHA. What's happening with those
No,
two?
Eisenberg is owned by DHHL.
Bolodrome, Eisenberg, that's
That's the Department of Hawaiian Homeland, just
Department
not
of Hawaiian
OHA.
Homelands. Fisherman's Wharf, what's
That's
that?
us.
That's
us.
Kakako
What's happening?
And that's what we're looking to develop. And the land chair, or the budget chair, has been asking for the EISs and all those things to be done. And so far, our administration has not been able to come up with what we've been requiring of them. That's been a big problem.
We did approve the plan for it already.
Yeah.
And so
Where is it?
so right now they're putting
3.9 mil.
they're putting the whole property through a like an EIS.
Well, we've been waiting, like 2 years.
But I think though, the fact that he brought up that property is I think at this point we just got to get the ball rolling somehow. So
Very
we should
visual,
probably.
it's got a lot of history. People.
It would be good to just focus on that one and not the
that's
whole
that's what we had
development.
planned to do, John.
Right.
And we're waiting for our administration to do their part.
We did. We went out, when I first got elected, we went out with Kehau,
Yeah.
Abad, and we went to all these community meetings. They gave us all these things that they wanted to see on that land. What happened to all of those sheets of paper that came from beneficiaries? It's stored away someplace. 3 years, nothing.
So
now it's there's
the
one
challenge
more
that I believe is happening there is to do something economically feasible based upon the height restrictions that the HCDA have, because they control the zoning in that
Right.
area.
But there's
is
no-
the
Yeah, but he
issue.
doesn't
There's no
understand.
restriction on
There's
the
a
land.
there's a restriction on the height on the
Right,
high
200
side of the
feet.
road. So
But not
the
where
number
we
of
wanna-
floors, the number of floors
All
that
the
you can
OPA already
create.
did that.
Not for where we
No, I know,
want to.
but Fisherman's Wharf though,
Fisherman's Wharf has no
we
restrictions.
were going to develop it based on how it was already
Yes.
zoned right now.
That's
So
right.
that one,
That one has no
we just
restrictions.
if we just did that one, we
trucks
could
and that.
we
That's
could
right.
do it.
But that's one building. I mean, if
That-
you could.
that's one parcel. We
if
can't
you
develop it
could-
all at
okay,
once.
So the other option, since we talked about partnering, is partner with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to use the Department of Hawaiian Homelands ability to zone. So take the zoning away from HCDA, let the department partner with you, zone the land, forget about the height restrictions, because now
I think what's good about this conversation and these questions is that people get a little bit of an understanding as to how complicated
Yeah,
it
it
is.
is. It is.
So I think, I know we can't get into all the details, but I think it gives people a little bit of a sense as to what the discussion at the table is like. Okay, here, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit from another question. How do you feel about the new CEO? And do you feel you can work with him?
We have a new CEO? I wasn't aware of that.
We have a
Come on,
new
I was been
COO.
around for-
CFO. I think.
CFO. I think they meant
What is
C-
it?
maybe they meant
CFO
is that right?
or
I see.
COO? I think they mean COO. That's like a deputy.
Okay, maybe there's some confusion there. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. We'll just move on.
Like, did something happen over the last 2 days?
Yeah, we hired a
There was a typo
COO.
in that one. Okay, I think this is a great question. So, what is your business plan for improving the quality of life for Native Hawaiians and everyone who lives in Hawaii? Kamehameha grad. This is a Kamehameha grad returning to Hawaii after 36 years. And he feels like the candidates are talking a lot about the past. They feel like they want to hear a little bit more about what's happening in the future. So again, business plan for improving the quality of life for Native Hawaiians.
I think you've heard a lot of us talk a little bit about it when we talked about federal recognition and the possibilities that holds for economic development for the state of Hawaii, not just for Native Hawaiians. Back to the question before about partnering, you know, since somebody brought up Eisenberg and its DHHL land, that's not suitable for homesteads. You could put 1, maybe 2 houses on there. But they could partner with OHA, and OHA could provide the guarantee for money and build a 25-story. There is no limit over there. They could build a 25-story building with businesses on the first 2 floors to help pay for the building, put affordable housing in there for anybody, and then have the top 4 floors for high paying because they're top 4 floors, and the rest of them could be homesteads.
Well,
Quote unquote
they don't need us
homesteads.
as a partner
If
for
you
that.
guys could just, we have a few more minutes, but I want to make sure you can jump in. And I got one more question if that's
Real
so. Keep
quickly,
it
there
short
is
if
an
you can.
EIS going on to do exactly that right now
Okay.
on that property.
Yeah, so you don't need
You wanted
us
to
like
know
that.
what the well, why? I'm not talking about the past because I just got in. Okay, I'm talking about the future. And if you watch KITV, we had this really great Council for Native Hawaiian conference yesterday. It was last night, and we talked about all these ideas. And if they would watch that, you know, show that's going to be put on, I want to see us be up to par with the question from the moderator last night was the demographics is changing in Hawaii. So how do you see the Hawaiians fitting in there when you got more Filipinos coming in, the Koreans, the Chinese, you know, it's really different. So I'm saying the Hawaiians should have their own bank. You have a Ohana bank, you have a Korean bank, Japanese bank, Filipino bank. With Donald Trump in there, for anybody to respect you now, you gotta have money.
Let's not get too far into that. Go ahead, John.
No, I think, and this is less
Going
exciting.
forward.
We're going to our strategic plan right now. I think we can we go through that process, and then I think we should like restructure the organization so that
Yep.
it caters more to what we do best.
Yes.
The work we do instead of what we wish we could be, and directs the grants more adequately, spends more money on the
Economic
beneficiary. Economic development.
Yeah, I have that.
Very good point, and I'm going to
spend less money on
One
ourselves.
more question
Okay.
in, and you're only going to have about 20 seconds each to respond to this. Why is the Hawaiian community and the entire state of Hawaii better off today than before OHA existed?
Native.
Oh, gosh.
So
Let's see.
native rights are protected, water rights are protected.
Iwi Kupuna are protected.
Iwi Kupuna are protected. There are people who have gone to college that have PhDs
right.
that have been funded.
Hawaiian language.
OHA,
the language,
OHA has started the
Renaissance.
educational programs at the university. We paid for the master's program there until the UH finally picked it up on its own. We started funding private schools for first grade through 12th grade. The first one was Navahi in Hilo, where we bought the property, and that was the first Punana Leo school that actually graduated someone from
I'm going to
first
let
grade
some
to
others
12th.
jump in.
But we've done tremendous with education.
The short
and-
answer is there is now a state agency whose sole purpose is to fight for Native Hawaiians. Whereas before, if you were Native Hawaiian and you wanted to fight the government, you were on your own.
Yeah,
I would just add one thing. Look
I
at the
wanna-
look at the passion around the table. That gentleman that asked the question earlier, what is OHA going to do? Look at all of us competing for the opportunity to make things better.
Today we had a board. You want to say before I talk about Demont? We had a board of
I
trustees.
wonder, okay, I'm
today.
going to squeeze this. I wonder if you can answer this quickly. I may have to, I apologize. I'm going to squeeze this in. Can each member explain how they have the knowledge and experience to serve on OHA?
I think we've been all
can do
been
it quickly?
I think we've all been expressing that all night.
Well, people know who I am, so I don't have to say.
I mean, it's just not just our passion, but you talked a little bit about all of our backgrounds. I spent my entire life fighting for Native Hawaiian rights. I was born and raised fighting for Native Hawaiian rights, from Ko'olave to Ko'kiu Beach on Molokai, to the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, to the AHA 2016, to where I'm at now.
Held in contempt of court by federal judge Alan Ezra, fighting for Iwi Kupuna, return of Makua Valley, keep holding the military accountable for the damage that they do in Hawaii, numerous other things.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll see. Like I've been there for 18 years.
He brings a history.
That's qualified.
Yeah, it's
You know, I
Mine
think
is-
it's difficult to answer because over the years we've done so many things that, you know, you just go on to the next one, the next one. We've protected water rights on every island. We've partnered with the DHHL from 1993. We still carry their debt service for $3 million a year. We continue to add advocacy for them.
When you've been on the board a long time, I know there's a lot to talk about. So
Yeah.
I think some great examples of that. And thank you so much,
I
all
wanted
of you.
to say I didn't
Go
say
ahead.
anything.
Go ahead.
When I got
Quickly.
on, it's economic development, because don't talk to me about all the expenditures. What about bringing in some income? You got all this land. We can grow hemp, medical marijuana. We can do so much more.
A lot to talk about. And thank you so much again, all of you. Mahalo to joining us tonight, and we thank all of our guests. William Isla Jr., John Wahe'e IV, Le Ahu'isa, Rowena Akana, and Brendan Lee. Next week on Insights, we feature 2 election contests with no incumbents from 8 to 8:30. The candidates for the State House District 36 representing Mililani and Mililani Mauka will face off. Democratic Marilyn Lee is trying to get her old job back against Republican Valerie Okimoto. Then from 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we feature the 2 vying for the Kona District seat on the Hawaii County Council, Rebecca Villegas and Kelly Drysdale. Please join us. Until then, I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Ahui ho.